Welcome to It Takes Two. I am Charles.
And I am Clarissa.
Talking shop on relationships, mental health, and
the relationship magic bullet, or at least the closest thing to it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll cover the question, how does validation cure many relationship woes, especially in regards to communication, and how validation deepens connection, understanding, and ultimately
love.
Yes. Sweet, sweet love. But before we dive in, let's start with our 1-2 stat fact of the week. What do we got? Dr. John Gottman, the leading researcher on marital relationships, reports that 50% of all marriages that end do so in the first 7 years. Fascinatingly enough, the average couple waits 6 years before seeking help for marital problems in therapy. Clarissa, that is a fascinating statistical relationship. But pun intended. Clarissa, the clinical director of Utah Marriage and Family Therapy Clinic and independently licensed marriage and family therapist, what are your thoughts on that statistical relationship?
It makes a lot of sense. Just based on what I see clinically being the word that I use when I say at work, at the therapy room, stuff like that. When I am in therapy, a lot of people wait a long time. I don't know how they do it. Like, how do you suffer through your problems for 6 years?
No, that's a great question. I immediately think of a physical injury comparison, like an analogy. Mm-hmm. So if let's say my knee is really hurting, like I'm suffering or I'm experiencing pain in my knee. If it goes for 1 or 2 weeks and then starts getting better, I'm not going to see a doctor. But if my knee hurts for a month or more, and it's getting worse or it's staying the same amount of pain, I'm going to go to a doctor. Could you imagine having an injury where you felt pain and suffered through it for more than 5 years, 6 years before you go get it checked out by a doctor?
Like a month, 2 months is understandable. You know, you hear those people, they're like, oh, I'm just going to tough it out, like that's understandable, but 6 years.
Yeah. So why do you think couples who are having challenges in their marriages and in relationships wait so long before they get in?
I don't know. I think it's like a few reasons. I mean, people have a lot of stigma about couples therapy and don't necessarily know that really can resolve some of the problems that they're experiencing. So sometimes they might think, oh, this problem's too small. I don't need to go to couples therapy for this. Or that maybe they think, oh, this is such a big problem, I don't even want to talk about it, or maybe it's too big to even overcome. So I think people just don't understand that couples therapy really can be that role for them. Then I also think it's just hard to communicate what they're feeling, and so they just don't want to come in.
That makes sense. And until it's kind of past a certain point, there's a tipping point or a breaking point where somebody says, okay, well, enough is enough. Either we go to couples therapy or it's over.
Yeah.
And by that point, I mean, you tell me, you're the clinician. It kind of feels like the stereotype is that it's too late. Like it's too little too late when it's been 6 years of an injury, of a trust injury, multiple trust injuries, unrepaired, unresolved. And then you try and quick fix it with therapy, and then it just ends in divorce anyway. Would you, speak to that.
I think that a lot of people come into therapy at that point, and it is this like confusing middle ground because they're in some ways wanting to fix it. So half of their goals are, I want to stick this out. I want to do whatever we can to like make this work. And then the other half of them is saying, I don't even know if I want this to work. It's been so long with these problems. I don't have hope that these problems will change. And so a lot of the time, like so much of couples therapy is kind of navigating that space of what do we actually want here? Do we want a divorce? Do we want to make it work? And that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. Have you ever had a couple, or maybe you in your own mind have thought, man, if you guys had just come in a few years earlier, it could be salvageable, but it's just past that. Have you had a couple say that, or have you thought that?
Man, why you gotta ask me that question?
Sorry.
That is like, yes, I have. I have had thoughts where I'm like, whoa, if you would have came in a lot earlier before all this built up resentment, we could have helped a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Which is just sad to say. I feel sad admitting to that.
We're going to move past our stat fact 1, 2. Thanks so much, Clarissa, for that fascinating statistical relationship. Now, let's get on to our disclaimer.
This podcast only provides information, not a viable replacement for a therapy session. If you need help or have an emergency, contact your local mental health authority. Our hosts are experts on mental health. Many of our guests are too. This podcast does not provide expert advice. It's just entertainment, baby. Dates and places have changed. This podcast should never replace real therapy.
Okay, on to our main content of this week, the validation being the magic bullet. To begin, we're going to start with a very popular YouTube video, classic. It's 90 seconds. Now, for you audio listeners, don't worry. The only context you need is that there is a woman in this video who has a nail protruding from her forehead. Okay? So we're gonna see.
She's talking to her husband.
Yes, thank you. She's talking to her husband. They're having a conversation, and this is a comedic sketch. It's pretty funny. Highly recommend it. But we're gonna listen to that real quick, and then we will segue into our discussion about validation.
It's just there's all this pressure, you know, and sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way.
Going in for the kiss, and they bonk heads with that nail.
I can't even think about that.
it's pretty gnarly. Oh, that's so funny. Love that video. Classic. I also like how there was a nod to our first episode about absolutes. Mm-hmm. You always do this. You always try and fix it. I thought that was that was really funny. And if you won't mind giving us a breakdown of what validation is.
The first time he responded was not the validation. That was the time where he was trying to fix it and problem solve, and she got really frustrated by that. Then the second time he made an attempt, it was validation, and that was when he said, "That sounds really hard." And so what we can learn about validation from that is that it's just about replying with a supportive statement to help the person feel like you are hearing their emotions.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That sounds extremely simple. So you're telling me the magic bullet is just saying that sounds really hard.
That can be a phrase that people say. That's actually a really common question in therapy. People are like, what do I say? Like, that's really hard, or things
Yeah.
like that. That's a phrase, but there's also a lot of other phrases.
Gotcha. Yeah, it reminds me of that phrase, addition by subtraction. Because the guy, like me and a lot of others, men and women, when they hear their partner expressing a negative emotion, they feel that they want to fix it, right? They want to solve that problem. They want to come up with a reason for it. They kind of complicate the interaction. And what is more supportive and better would just be remove all that. Don't try and fix it. And just, as you said, state a supportive statement that demonstrates that you heard and understood them. Like, yeah, that sounds really hard. Having a nail sticking out of your forehead must be really hard. Okay, so Clarissa, how important is validation? We say it's the magic bullet. Tell us more about that.
It's extremely important. I would say this has got to be one of the things that if you do this, it can resolve so many conflict issues and connection issues, because a lot of people get like defensive when they communicate rather than just validating and hearing their partner. And most often, like, that's what people want, is just to be validated and heard, instead of to like quit back with like a defensive statement or a but statement.
Yeah.
And they just want you to be able to like hear them. And so even in my office, like I have this little poster on my whiteboard, and it's just like this pretty little like validation, like written in clouds and butterflies, like, because I want people to do that. Like, I do not want people to be sitting in my office not validating each other, and I don't want them to go home and not validate each other. And so it's just
Well, and is that not half of your job as a therapist, is just validating clients, and especially individual clients?
Yes. And what's incredible is that majority of my work is validation, and the majority of people report feeling better.
Yeah, it improves their mental health, their well-being. Just having a therapist validate what they've experienced, it just seems like such a crucial need.
Yeah. And when I work with couples, I do validate the person, but I'm also trying to coach or help them validate each other.
Yeah.
Which makes couples therapy very successful.
Yeah, and maybe we could role play, do like a quick little scenario. Okay, so let's say I'm a stay-at-home dad. Okay, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and it's the weekend, and I'm just blowing off some steam, and I say, "Oh, I am so exhausted. Timmy was acting up again. I thought we made it past potty training, but he's kind of reverting, and it was so stressful cleaning it up, and then the dogs were getting into it. And I don't know, it just feels like we're not giving them enough time and attention. And I've just been so stressed about all the things coming up. I'm so overwhelmed right now."
So the first thing I'm going to say is the thing to not do. So do not repeat what I'm about to say.
But this is common, right?
But
Like this
is
was a common response. Yeah. Okay.
And then the second thing I say will be the validating stuff. So
I feel so stressed and overwhelmed right now.
okay, I hate this so much. I cannot.
I can't even act it out because it's just so hard.
It's so hard and it's so uncomfortable, and I just know how wrong it is.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to even pretend.
Yeah.
If I was to reply with a non-validated thing, maybe I would say, "I'm sorry, honey, but you're home all the time."
Well, that's part of the problem is I never get time to myself, and with all the things that the kids have been doing, I don't feel like, I just feel super overwhelmed.
Have you been making sure that they're taking their nap time, and then when they're in their nap that you're using your time for yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm trying, but it's hard. How is this somehow my fault now?
I hate it.
You hate it.
I hate it. I can't even keep going.
Yeah.
That's not what not to do.
Yeah, so what not to do? Because why is why even if the partner B in this case is you, is trying to help me problem solve and find ways to not feel stressed and overwhelmed, why does that not work?
Because when people are talking about their problems, usually they aren't looking to problem solve. And I know that's confusing, but a lot of times they're not looking for you to fix it all. They're just wanting somebody to be there for them.
Totally.
And so to like start problem solving, or if you notice I said, I'm sorry, like as if I'm about to be understanding, which is what a lot of people do. They usually like start to say something understanding and then they go, but
however,
because they want to get their point across instead of just stopping there and being there for their partner.
So let's do the good example. Baby, I'm feeling so stressed and so overwhelmed.
Wow, I'm like so sorry. I didn't want to say that's really hard because that's what the guy said.
Right. But it is being really hard. It is really hard to be stressed and overwhelmed.
Yes.
Okay. Babe, I'm just feeling so stressed and overwhelmed with everything going on.
Yeah, I could see why the dogs, they need more training, and the kids are just at that stage that it's really hard. And like I could just see where it'd be really stressful to be home with them all the time.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It's really challenging. I just wish I had more time for them, for the dogs, but also for me. I just don't feel like I get enough time.
Yeah. Makes sense. I don't know if you do.
Boom. See that? Not trying to solve problems, not trying to make it about themselves. I think that's another thing that people do. Will be like, well, I'm at work all day. You know, like at least you're home, you know, those types of phrases.
Yeah, because people start to do that because they start to like get defensive. Like, why are you talking about this problem? Like when I'm at work, I can't be at home. Like they think it's about them. Like I can't be at home helping you with this stuff because I got to make money. So I'm at work.
Right.
Oh, that happens so much.
Well, yeah, because if partner A is complaining to partner B about it, partner B thinks they're complaining to them because they are the one that needs to solve it.
And they feel attacked by partner A's like complaints.
Totally. But what's happening in reality? What am I, partner A, experiencing, and why am I talking to you about it? Life
is hard. So
this just in. Hard. Life.
We're just going to experience a lot of negative things through life. And that like pain, uncertainty, suffering, it's just there. Like you're just going to experience that. And so when people get emotions, generally what helps them is talking to their partner or a friend about it. And so then they do. And so then the best thing you can do is be validated. So if partner A comes to you about an emotion that they're experiencing, just be there for them.
Don't try and solve it. Well, this actually segues well into our second question here for you, Clarissa. What is the biggest challenge for couples when they are trying to validate one another?
I would say the biggest problem is that people don't agree with their partner or they don't want to enable their partner. And so they don't feel capable of validating because they don't want to say like, oh yeah, you're right. Or like let that person have that emotion.
Yes. You're going to laugh when I bring this up. It actually reminds me, it was our third year of marriage. And it was when you were teaching me about validation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It took me till my third year of marriage before I learned how to validate. So, but we made it. We're past the 7-year mark. So I think our odds are pretty good. I think we're doing all right.
Yes.
You're looking all right too over there. Stop. Anyway, no, so it was our third year of marriage. And there was this person in our circle that we both knew pretty well. We'll say their name is Debbie. Debbie. Okay. And actually, we take it away. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you wouldn't mind picking up, tell us about Debbie.
In this story, I was the one that had the issues with Debbie. And I would come to you about those issues because you're my person. I want to talk about it. I'm struggling with it. So I wanted to talk to you about the problems that I was having with Debbie. And you didn't agree with me on those problems. And believe you thought I had like some confirmation bias.
Yeah. So basically, I felt that when we would spend time with Debbie or she would talk to some of our friends or whatever, that Debbie would say something and Clarissa would interpret that to be an attack or a slight or something like that. And she would express, I feel like Debbie's out to get me or Debbie's got ill intent or something. And then I would basically be like, no, look at how she treats other people. There's no way she's doing that for you. I didn't agree with you. I felt like what she was saying was innocuous or didn't have an ill intent. And so I didn't want to validate you because I was afraid that if I validated you, that I would be confirming the bias you had against Debbie.
Mm-hmm. Which made it worse. Like if I came to you and I had this issue and then you didn't validate me, then my like feelings about it would just feel stronger.
Because you had to explain or justify, or you were feeling these feelings, and so there had to have been a reason why, and so you would double down, and then I would double down, and then it would escalate. And
yes.
Even though my intent was, hey, don't be hurt by Debbie, she doesn't mean it that way. Like, just like stop feeling that is honestly what I was saying. Is like, your feelings are wrong is really what I was saying. She didn't mean that. So the way that you're feeling is wrong. And that made it so much worse. Cause at that point I'm shaming you for feeling what you're feeling.
So then I feel that, and I still feel all the issues and feelings about Debbie. And then it just would escalate and just make me feel really not great.
Yeah. So you were in grad school at the time, learning about validation. And so you were talking to me, and you were in mid-argument, you were kind of coaching me through how to validate. And how did that coaching go? Remind me.
Yeah. And if you remember, I was already an intern therapist. So I think that also probably made it worse because I was in sessions all the time validating people, and I just wanted to come home and be validated.
Yes.
Right.
Totally.
So, and I think I remember talking to you about it, like the coaching, teaching you aspect on that road trip to San Diego.
Yes, totally remember that.
So we took this spontaneous road trip to San Diego, and in the car ride, I decided to bring it up and try and talk about it, which we often get in really serious conversations on the road trips. Just happens.
Oh, but I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated because I was like, who the crap cares about Debbie? Like, why are we talking about Debbie on our way to a vacation? So then I was like even more agitated and frustrated. Like, why is this such a big deal? And it was, again, shaming you.
Yeah.
For feeling.
Which I can see, it makes sense that you'd be frustrated by it. We were going on vacation, and it was supposed to be an escape the world type vacation. Like, let's just, you and me, let's just get out of here.
Yeah. And I think that's why you were talking about it, is because you wanted to put it to rest so that we could enjoy our time and not have any resentments or held up emotions. So in your defense.
Oh, thank you. Look at us validating each other. When I was coaching you, I remember pointing out to you that when we are at church or with our friends, that you validate people all over the place. Your family, like, you validate people in so many of your conversations.
Yeah.
So I knew you were capable of it. And do you remember what you said back to me?
Yes, I said, I'm not married to them.
Which,
and I'm not, if I enable them, it's not my responsibility to change their behavior. So if they kept misinterpreting what somebody else was saying, that's not my problem. And which is just so funny that I projected that, like, it was my responsibility to change how you felt about something because I'm married to you. But that's so wrong. Like, I should have approached it with the same level of empathy and support and compassion that I can show for my friends or these other people in my circles that I don't have any major stake in anyway. It's interesting.
Well, it kind of goes to what we were saying about how it feels personal. Like, when people open up about their emotions to their partner, for some reason it does feel personal. Yeah. Like it's about you, because when you're married, there is like that unity that you experience where you're kind of one together. This is your unit.
Right.
And so I think that's why you cared so much about me having these emotions versus just a random friend having emotions.
That's true. And that actually prompted another thought. I remember you saying something like, why are you defending Debbie so much? Mm-hmm. You're married to me, right? And then I was like, it's not about Debbie. It's the principle. This could be anyone on the planet. And I would still feel
I
this way.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I had to really coach you so much because you already had the skills. Yeah. I just needed to point out to you that you were able to, and that this is what it looks like.
And that I wasn't agreeing with you. That by validating you, I wasn't saying what you are experiencing is objectively what is happening.
Yes.
But that validation is it's a separate thing.
Yes, very much. In addition to pointing it out, I did have some tips of like, here's some things you can say.
True.
That's really hard. Sounds frustrating. Just really simple statements like that. I think a really good one that I probably shared with you then, and I still really believe in, is if you don't know what to say, then just saying, I'm not sure what to say right now, but I'm really glad you're talking about it.
I love that. Can you say it one more time for the listeners?
Yes. I'm really not sure what to say right now, but I'm glad you're talking about it.
Yes, because that first off, that's authentic. That's honest. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes when people apologize, you can tell they're not being real about it. They're just trying to say, I'm sorry because whatever. But to say something like, wow, I don't know what to say. I'm just really glad you're sharing that with me. That's powerful.
Yeah, and it does kind of help you take off the pressure to find all the right words to validate somebody with. Just something as simple as that can be validating.
Totally. That transitions well into our third point here. How can couples practice validation, and what are some tools we can use? I'm just going to preface that conversation with some research done by Dr. Jeremy Bidwell. In an article, he discusses how validation de-escalates an argument, or in other words, reduces anger in a discussion between couples. The key thing he points out is removing the word but from the dialogue. When practicing validation, this could be a great cue to redirect an argument pattern. When one partner listens to the other and then replies with but, to pause that train of thought and course correct into a validating statement. So kind of going back to our example where you said, with me being the stay-at-home dad, you said, I'm sorry, but blah, 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 blah. That completely undermines any validation that has occurred prior. Would you say that's probably the most common communication snafu when couples are arguing, is the yeah, but?
It's up there for sure. I think it's because people give an attempt to validate, I'm sorry, or yeah, that's hard, but then they can still like get their point in.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's because they also don't feel heard. And so if both partners go into the situation validating each other each time the person is saying something, then it should remove the desire to say, but da-da-da-da. Because you should be able to take turns validating, which is probably what I would add is like, how do people practice? There's the speaker-listener technique.
Tell us about that, yeah.
It's very structured, but one person takes a turn being the speaker, one person takes a turn being a listener, and the speaker has rules of keeping it short, speaking in I statements, and then the listener has rules of not thinking about what you're going to say next, and just listening to the point where you're able to reflect what the person said back. And so then you could say, what I'm hearing is that this and this and this, is that correct? And that can also be a form of validation because you are just reflecting what the person said. And then you can level it up over time when you get used to it. A lot of people might need to rely on the speaker listener technique. And then over time, they get better at it and they don't need those types of tools. And they can just naturally do that in an argument or a conversation.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I love that. Speaker listener technique. And you say you do that, you help couples in therapy with that pretty regularly.
Yeah, it's very structured. So sometimes it feels off and I kind of leave that as homework to like go do on their own.
Sure.
There's lots of tools. If you were to Google it, you could find a lot of resources about it.
Cool.
That'd probably be the best way to start with the speaker listener.
Excellent. Excellent. I love it. I love it. One thing that was highlighted in the research in preparation of this podcast was that the reasons why there's a disagreement over validation or using the buts or yeah, but is an alternate reality, or basically two people experiencing an event in different ways and they can't agree on how it transpired. And so they don't feel like they can validate because they experience the event differently. So we don't have time to really dive into alternate realities. I think that's like its own, it's not a Marvel, this isn't Doctor Strange. Alternate realities is something that all couples experience in the fact that we're two different human beings experiencing an event through different lenses.
Yeah.
But yeah, how does alternate realities influence the challenge of validating when couples are in a discussion?
Because people start to try and match up the realities. So it really gets in the way of just hearing and validating, because then you have this desire to be like, well, that's not how it happened. So it's like a form of defensiveness. Yeah. And so when the partner says something like maybe vulnerable or that's needing validation, then the other partner just wants to quit back and be like, but I remember as this, or like, that's not actually what happened. Instead of just recognizing that that person has their reality and did experience that in that way.
Yeah.
And even though you didn't experience that situation in that way, doesn't mean that theirs is less valid. Just as if they were trying to correct your experience, you wouldn't like that either. So yours is valid, theirs is valid, and they both can exist.
Love it. Love it. Love it. That's so good. It's a mindset. It then is really what I'm hearing a lot of here, where I need to remove my objective. If I'm having a conversation with you and I want to fix your problem, throw that out. If I want to correct you on the events that transpired, throw that out. Addition by subtraction. My mindset in talking to you when you're expressing emotion is to hear you, mirror that, and then validate it.
Allow it to exist.
Love it. Love it. Love it. A couple more things here real quick. Continuing with Dr. Bidwell, this is actually really funny. Dr. Bidwell notes on the subject of validation as a communication method. He says, I find something slightly amusing about hostage negotiators and couples in marital therapy being trained in the same techniques, but it works. I love that. I think that's so funny. Chris Voss, he is an ex-FBI negotiator who wrote a book on negotiation called Never Split the Difference. I use this book in my class. It absolutely teaches concepts related to validation by inviting readers to mirror the words spoken and then to label their pain in order to ensure that the speaker feels understood. He describes this as tactical empathy. Anyways, I just want to ask you, Clarissa, why does validation work for humans in the most extreme scenarios, such as a hostage negotiation, as well as in the day-to-day relationship conversations most couples have? And then, do some couples' arguments sound like a hostage negotiation?
Absolutely. And to that last one. And validation works because it makes you feel safe and heard and like the other person is on your team and not going against you. So I'm guessing in a hostage situation, makes you feel like that person is on your team and not going against you, which could be used for the bad thing. But as a couple, you should build that trust and use it as a safe communicating tool.
Yeah. I know in our relationship, there have been arguments where we've had where by the end of it, we're just like, I feel like we're not on the same team and we're arguing against each other instead of arguing together for something we as a team want. Mm-hmm. And I find that so important that you establish, hey, it's not you versus me, it's us getting on the same page
against the problem,
together. The challenge and whatnot. And validation, it sounds like that's really the foundation of that teamwork.
Yeah, because it lets both people's experiences exist, and balancing both of those can really create that magic where you don't feel like you're going up against each other, but you feel like the other person has your back.
Yeah, that's all we want. I love it. Well, hey, Clarissa, let's talk about the takeaways before we conclude. Validation is
a listening tool where you reply with a supportive statement, acknowledging that you heard the person's emotions and what they said.
Love it. And it works because
it makes people feel safe and supported and like you're on their team, so it lowers their guard.
There's no magic bullet. To be clear, our title was slightly clickbaity because validation doesn't solve all problems. But validation does come pretty close in that it can resolve many arguments and foster connection, understanding, and love. Wonderful.
Cute.
Before we leave you, as always, we're going to provide a connection question and date idea. What do you got for the listeners this week, Clarissa? What kind of fun date can they do?
Here's a fun idea to try out your new validation skills. Make your favorite finger foods and post up on the couch with your smartphones. Take turns pulling up YouTube videos that evoke a certain emotion in you. Start with your favorite memes and explain why you find it so funny. The partner mirrors the reasons why, and then it's their turn. Find videos, TikToks, Reels, whatever that makes you sad, mad, amazed, scared, excited, etc. After each video, share why it hits you in the feels and then have your partner validate those reasons. It's a low stakes, fun way to connect and practice this crucial communication tool.
It sounds fun.
It does.
Should we do that this weekend?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
I like it.
All right. Well, this is Charles.
And Clarissa signing off.
Now just remember, for things to get better,
for me and you,
it takes two. First try. Let's go.